أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا صراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen.
Assalamu alaikum, Electa.
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Deborah.
Alhamdulillah. I'm so happy to be here with you because I was blessed during Ramadan of 2012 to actually have you share your experience, your near-death experience with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just like, it was so remarkable. And I call it an experience and not a story because I believe it to be absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
And a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Mm-hmm.
And it touched me so. And it has fortified my faith and my spirit so. And I consider it one of the blessings of Ramadan 2012.
Mm-hmm.
That I thought it important enough for you to share your memories and your experience with others. So I would just like you to begin sharing what you shared with me,
okay.
All that you can remember, and every so often I may just, ask a question or two.
Okay.
But if you could just speak up so we can hear you in the mic, that would be wonderful, inshallah.
All right. Evidently, I had missed in March, the end of March, a couple days of work. And my supervisor came by here, and work that she had given me to take home, I had finished. So she came to the door. This is what I was told. I wasn't aware of it. I don't remember it. But she said it was, what she told my family was unlike me to not call if I wasn't going to come and let her know, especially when there were projects that were important that needed to be completed. So she called my brother because he was the one I had as the person to contact in an emergency. And she told him I looked like I wasn't doing well. And so he told his wife. She came on that Sunday, which was, I don't know if it was the 1st of April, whenever the first Sunday in April was. And when she came in here, she said I didn't look well. My speech was rambling, and my left eye was full of blood. It wasn't just red, it was deeply red. And she got very afraid for my health and called 911, and an ambulance came, and she called my brother, and they both got here, according to her, at the same time. And so they took me to DeKalb Medical Hospital, and they discovered I was having a brain aneurysm, and they didn't handle that. And my brother is an insurance investigator, so he knows a lot about doctors, etc., etc. So he asked for the best neurosurgeon in town.
Allahu Akbar.
Alhamdulillah. And so they took me to Emory, and I quite frankly don't remember any of Emory experience, but I was told that my daughter was here, friends were coming and visiting, and I was saying Allahu Akbar and all kinds of stuff, and I prayed, and I don't recall it. I'm so sorry at all. And I was told by my family that the neurosurgeon who performed surgery had said it would take 6 to 9 months for me to fully recover my short-term memory. And so, but while I was in the coma, I was in and out of comas. That's what I was told. And I don't know if it was 1 time or several times, but I transitioned out of this life. And I saw, first of all, I saw light. And it was a brilliant light. I can't really articulate well because I've not ever seen it like that in this life. And so I was walking towards the light, and gates opened, and really wide. I pray I can do this without tears because it's not going to be easy.
If you do it with tears, it is okay.
Okay. And some doors opened. I never seen anything. It's indescribably beautiful. Allah tells us in the Quran that the mansions that He has is nothing like it's like the paradise, the heaven that He has for us. And that is true beyond how I can articulate it. But what blew my mind is that when I got to where the gates, were open, my father, who died in 1992, oh God help me, came from the right and stood in front of me. And he was young. My father was, I have a brother. How old was Daddy? 72? My father was 72 when he passed. He had a massive stroke. He had a tumor in his brain. And they took the tumor out, but it left him where he couldn't articulate well. He would salivate and have to keep a washcloth. He eventually got where he deteriorated physically, where he couldn't walk anymore. He was in a wheelchair. And he got where he needed constant care. My mother didn't have the physical strength because of her own health issues to take care of him. And though we had one of our nieces there, she had to work during the day. She worked for the city that they lived in. And when I saw him, I didn't know where to put it. I asked him, I said, how old are you? He said, 33.
And what's the significance of 33?
Well, Imam W.D. Muhammad, who has been my teacher and leader almost all, I came into the religion under Elijah Muhammad. I'd only been in 2 years before he returned to Allah. And then Imam W.D. Muhammad became the leader, and he, through a system of gradual re-education, helped us to understand that no one is old who goes to paradise. They're between 30 and 33 years old. And when I saw him, he was handsome. And so he told me, he said, well, what he did, he said, I want to take you to your uncle's house. And my uncle was a Baptist preacher who treated all of his family royally. I mean, really. He was a wonderful human being. And all of the children, he would just loved him. We loved him. His name was Jacob Daniel Buckley. We all called him Uncle Jake. And my father's name is Lunsford Ingram. And so anyway, to make a long story short, I went with my father to visit my uncle. But before we did that, he took me to his house. I have no way to articulate. That is not a house. When it says mansion, I can't articulate intelligently how it looked. It's beyond this life. There's nothing in this life comparable at all. And the things he loved to garden. We grew a lot of food when we were kids. My father and mother grew a lot of the food we ate every day. We had grapevines, we had apple trees, we had greens, we had cabbage. Most of the vegetables that we ate were out of our parents' garden. And our yard was beautiful because my father loved to work in the yard. And one of the things he did for me and my brothers is we had an oak tree in the backyard. He put a swing on one of the limbs for us. He just loved us. And another thing about my father before I go on, my father, we weren't sent to church. He took us. As soon as we were old enough to go to Sunday school, he'd take us to Sunday school, and it was followed by church. And not only did he do that, he made sure that we were workers in God's way. My brother is my witness who's sitting here. My father had, when I was old enough and had taken typing, it's kind of funny, the lady who was the secretary of the church got married and moved to Chicago. My father went and talked to the pastor of the church and told him, my daughter can be the new church secretary. She has all the skills. All I had was how to type. But I did take accounting and some of the other things. But I actually got my accounting experience at the church. And I did the bulletin every week. And then they were once a month, I think it was the first Sunday in the month, I had to put down how much they gave in tithe and that kind of thing. And we had these old machines in the basement of the building that we had our Sunday school classes in, and I had to go and turn the mimeograph machine and all that stuff. So I'm telling my age, but that's okay. Anyway, and duplicating a machine so that I could print out the bulletins for the church. And my brothers were given the opportunity, were taught to do the lawn, any other repairs, build. What else did they? Janitors. They were the church janitors, so Torah staff. And I have 5 brothers. And my sister, I'm the oldest, my sister's the youngest. Because I could also sing, I had to sing in the choir. And I led quite a few songs. So by God's grace and mercy, He had us use whatever gift we had. We all had to use our gifts that were given to us by God. And my uncle had a vacation Bible school. Now, my father, we went to the Methodist church, AME Zion. But my uncle was a pastor of a Baptist church, so they had vacation Bible school. So to support, because he's my grandmother, my mother's mother. He's my grandmother's brother. He's my great uncle. And the way he did us, we didn't have any favoritism because we were his nephews and nieces. We had to do what we were supposed to do, and that was the end of it. But he loved us, and he didn't hide it. It was wonderful. So after our daddy took me to where his house was, oh my goodness, he got food out of his garden, and he packed it, and we went over to Uncle Jake's house. He was a different kind of minister. If people wronged their own souls, he put them out. He would not let them do wrong and still be members of his church because he wanted to set a good example. He was a sincere pastor. And the way he treated not just me and my brothers and my sister, my cousins, all of us, he was our favorite uncle. And of all our uncles, he was a favorite. That's on Mama's side of the family and Daddy's side of the family. And Daddy had a whole bunch of brothers. Okay? But he was my great uncle. So maybe his years of living or whatever, and how to treat people and be a true servant of God. And I started asking myself, I said, why did I see them too? And it dawned on me, those were the 2 people in my life that had the most powerful influence on my heart and on my spiritual life. Both of them, two men. They were obligated by God to raise us to love Him, and they did. And that's why Allah let me see them especially. So I wasn't there very long, I don't think. They fixed dinner, and I sat and ate dinner, and then I was thirsty. So I asked my father for some water, and the water was different. And I could feel it when it entered my system. And it was healing, like the Zamzam, even more so like the Zamzam, because I have made Hajj. And I know that heals, but you don't necessarily feel it like that. It touched my spirit in a way I can't articulate well. And so after I drank the water, my uncle and my father said, "We got to take you someplace. They've asked for you." And they took me. I don't know what it's called, but we walked to the place. And in the walking, I saw sisters who in this life had been Muslims, Christians, Jews, or didn't profess a particular faith, but they loved God and they demonstrated it. And they were all covered like Muslim women. And so I looked and I asked my daddy. I didn't know they were different. I thought they were all Muslims. And I asked him a question. I said, where are they from? He said, they're Muslims, Christians, and Jews. I said, oh. And I don't know what made me ask about it, but I asked about, because my father was a Christian, I asked him about Jesus. He said he's in the seventh heaven. So is Abraham, Moses. He mentioned just a few that he knew. Daniel, Jacob, and Muhammad. When he said Muhammad, I was floored. He said, and Imam Muhammad, by the way, I saw him there too. And I never saw them. But when he told me that, and Maryam, I forgot about her. Daddy said, and Maryam. He didn't say Mary. He said Maryam is in the seventh heaven. Jesus' mother, Esau's mother. He didn't call him Esau. But at any rate, wherever they took me, it was a different kind of beauty, a beauty beyond my ability to articulate. I consider myself a reasonably intelligent woman and reasonably can articulate things, but I can't do it because it's beyond my ability to explain it well. But there were smells that I have never smelled, and beauty that is not here. I've had jobs where I've been overseas. I've been to many cities in America. I've not seen that kind of beauty where I can articulate it. And there were angels. Oh Lord, everywhere I looked. Beautiful. And I didn't see, but I heard a voice. It didn't just touch my ears. It touched my whole body. I could feel it when he talked to me, all over me. And it was rich and beautiful. And I realized it was Allah's voice. And he said, welcome, my dear servant. Oh, Allah. And Daddy was with me, Uncle Jake was with me. And he said to me, he had a conversation with me. I don't remember everything, but I remember him talking to me about things he wanted me to share. And he made reference references at one time the earth was filled with dinosaurs, and people were not like they are now, but through his will to progress the creation, he has changed that. There are no more dinosaurs, and we often have animals who they're becoming extinct by his design, and no matter how human beings try to keep them here, if it's God's will that they become extinct, they do that, because what they can give to humanity or to the world is not needed anymore. So then he started talking to me about two institutions that were vital. He talked to me about, and that they were created by his design. And we think we're doing this stuff, and none of us are. He's using what he's deposited in each of us to get the creation where he wants it to go. And he mentioned law, and how law began. He sends two kinds of men to creation, or two kinds of spirits to creation. One is given to, he talked about one who's given to harming his own soul by wronging it. So he creates another one that loves order, law and order. And so we have these systems in place and talents in place: lawyers, police officers, sheriffs, jails, precincts, prisons, wardens. Just whatever is involved in law has been created by his design, and it goes all the way up to government with our Attorney General. And then he talked about health. He said the second one is, because this is where I have you right now, is struggling with your health. And he said to me, when at one time people would die from the things that you have. And he started telling me about how through the process of time I have grown the health industry. And we have doctors, lawyers, we have scientists, we have all kinds of stuff now that just a few years ago were not even in existence. Cures for things that at one time were not curable. And I just lost it. And I started thinking about, and then somewhere in there I got sent back to here. He said, he told me I couldn't stay because I had more to do. It's not my time. And when I woke up, this is the one thing I do remember. And I was at Emory. My daughter was sitting at my bedside. And when I woke up, I guess it was different than any other time she had been there with me. And I talked to her. And I didn't know my daughter's name, and I named her. And so I had to ask her, what's your name? Forgive me. And she said, Mama, that's okay. And she told me of all the people that had been to visit me. And there was another sister who was a friend of mine, one of my best friends, who was on the weekend, stayed there the entire weekend. And I was just floored. I didn't have consciousness of what was going on around me. My daughter told me that I was talking to the hospital staff. When they did something I didn't understand, I'd ask questions. And I kept saying, oh Allah, I don't know where to put this. But at any rate, I do remember, I don't know if it's because but people have told me that I had to be put. I was in had a brain aneurysm, and the hospital staff there had begun noticing I had swelling, and so they had to go and have the doctor operate again to get the swelling out. So they put a thing in my, like a thing in my head to drain the blood off, and so that I would live, because that was a life-threatening illness, and most people don't live through a brain aneurysm. They don't live, and they kept telling me this. But they sent me, after I got well enough, to a Golden Living Center, which is a rehab center, or for some, they're going to be their home for them. So it's a nursing home and a rehab center. I was on the rehab end of the building so that I could get well enough to go home. And I was told by the hospital staff that when I first came, I looked like I wasn't going to live. And I talked and laughed incessantly. When they did try to do a therapy on me, they couldn't because I was not focused enough. And so one day I was after I got it, but they watched me heal. It had to be the believer prayers for me. It had to be. I don't know anything else. They prayed so many people. I had them tell me they prayed for me. It was more than I could ever have hoped for, ever. I know I have prayed for people, but it's different when the prayers are for you. Oh my goodness. Anyway, I began to heal miraculously. And all of the nurses, the professional people, the CNAs are called, Certified Nurse Assistants, kept saying, "You're a miracle. You are in the doors of death. It's a miracle that you have come this far from where you were." And they would tell me that most people pass on to the next life. I was floored. I don't remember my sister-in-law coming. I don't remember being in Emory at all. I do remember the Golden Living Center. And they said that I was in a wheelchair running in and out of the other patients' rooms. And I'm going to tell you, most of the people there, it has been a life-altering experience, because they all have been through a death experience and lived through it. And it draws you nearer in a way I cannot articulate to the Lord of all worlds. He had Christians in paradise, Muslims in paradise, Jews in paradise, and people who had no recognizable faith in God. We need to learn that. And this is something that all of us learned. And I would share my story with the Christians there. It was a man named Mr. Epstein. He was Jew. I shared it with him. And we cried. And there was because many of them had death experience and had the same kind of experience I had. And we learned God doesn't favor you because of what He gives you something you need for your life. And hopefully you will serve Him well. And the people I had in my room, I had one, she was struggling with herself. But I had a lady, she was 84 years old, named Leona Phillips. And every time she would just watch me open up the curtains, things that I never really thought about, the simple things in life. Okay. Okay. The simple things in life, like seeing the sunrise, became beauty to me in a way I can't articulate. Seeing the sunset and looking out the window and seeing the moon and stars meant the world to me. Things I looked at them before and they didn't have. I loved it. It was pretty. one of the things I realized after this experience, how good God is, and He makes you appreciate little things. Right now, in the morning, I have to admit, I cannot pray my prayer in the morning without tears, because He let me see the light of another day. And I'm grateful for every moment to be able to fix myself a meal. I took it for granted before. I just run in the kitchen and fix the food and sit down and eat. I pray over it like you're supposed to and would be grateful. But it's different now. The faith that He has given me, the love for Him. I tell Him every morning, I love you a lot. I can't articulate well how much I love Him. He's worth it, sister. He's worth whatever you have to endure to please Him. Is worth it. That's all I can say. Is no matter what He puts us through to test us, because He says, I have to test your metal. And hard trials are necessary to establish truth. But if you give yourself to Him, no matter what, all I can say is, it's worth it in more ways than you could ever know in this life. Live for God. Live for His pleasure. Fight for His cause. And know that every other person who has a religion is not going to be bad influence. They are wonderful Christians. They are wonderful Jews. And if you live the book, He says in the Quran, if you live the book, if the Jews live their book, if the Christians live their book, there's no difference in our behavior. And we will do the good things that He asks of us. And I have to say, I do bear witness. And I pray that I am blessed with Jenna. And me.
I have a question to ask you, because a lot of times when we hear about these near-death experiences, we haven't had one, so we don't understand what the environment's like. If it's, many of us have dreams, but we know that the dream is a different a dream state. Can you talk a little bit about how it was in your experience?
It wasn't a dream. I felt my spirit leave. It wasn't a dream. My spirit transitioned out of His life. And I can't articulate well at all how I knew it wasn't a dream. We have dreams, and we know when something is a dream and when something is something else. That's all I can say. And to see two people in my family, and to see an environment I had never seen before. It's not in this life. To see flowers and fruit and water and colors and people dressed like I dress, even more than I sometimes dress. And they weren't of my faith. So though I'm grateful for Alice's mom, it has taught me, if you're good in what you're good and you obey as best as you can in how you believe, you'll get Jenna. And I'm grateful. I ask myself every morning, I don't always articulate it openly, what did I do that made where He picked me for this? I feel very blessed in a way I can't articulate well. And I do know that because He told me, you need to go back and do, because He said, you've been a good servant. Okay, to tell me that meant everything to me, because I always questioned, am I doing enough good deeds? Forgive me. And it was as way of saying, trust what you do. Because he puts in us enough wisdom to know if we are pleasing him. And I beg for forgiveness for my sins in every prayer. And I pray for my family and my friends and the Muslim Ummah every day. And for believers who have special needs. And I don't know if it's what I do has been enough. But to have that kind of experience where Allah assures you you've done enough. And I didn't want to come back. I'm going to be honest. It was so beautiful beyond explanation. But I obeyed him. He said, you got to go back. You have 3 more things you need to experience. I said, okay. And that's when I woke up and saw my daughter. And so everybody I talk to, I tell them about it. And I don't make people cry, but it's true. That's all I can say.
They're tears of joy.
It's worth it. Whatever you have to go through is worth it for heaven, for paradise. It is worth it. Trust me. It is beautiful beyond description. It is. And I thank Allah that I could come back and share what he gave me with others. Because I know many of us, that's what we want. We want heaven. We want paradise. We want the Jannah. And he tells us to pray for Firdaus. And that's what I've been doing. Because I want to go back to that. I mean, it was beyond. It's worth, that life is worth whatever you have to deal with in his way, in this one. That's all I got to say. And I beg Allah, I have done what pleases him with this videotape. Ameen.
Allahu Akbar. Ameen. Thank you so much, Electa. Thank you.
You're welcome.
May Allah be pleased.
Ameen.
Ameen.